Before Joseph entered the grove, heaven was silent, so he could finally hear the question burning in his soul. You know this feeling. You are likely in the middle of it right now. You pretend you are fine. You walk through your day. You smile at the right moments. You say the prayers you have memorized since childhood. But underneath the surface, there is a hollow ache. It is the ache of a ceiling made of brass. It is the terrifying suspicion that perhaps you are talking to an empty room. But I am here to tell you that this silence is not an absence. It is not an abandonment. It is a preparation. If you are feeling the weight of the heavens pressing down on you, if you are feeling the confusion of 1,000 conflicting voices in your life, do not turn away. Do not numb yourself with the noise of the world. Stay here. If this resonates with your spirit, if you are tired of the noise and ready for the answer, write one word in the comments. Ready. Do it as a signal to your own soul that you are done pretending. You are ready to enter your own sacred grove. This is the secret that no one tells you about revelation. It requires a precursor of absolute, crushing stillness. We look at the painting of Joseph Smith in the grove, the light, the peace, the divine presence, and we want the end result without the journey through the dark woods. We want the pillar of light without the wrestling match. But the spiritual physics of the universe do not work that way. Before the light broke the canopy of the trees, Joseph had to walk away from the crowd. He had to leave the revivalists. He had to leave the arguments of the preachers. He had to leave the comfort of his family's cabin. He had to go where he could be entirely, terrifyingly alone. And that is where you find yourself. You feel isolated. You feel as though no one understands the specific burden you carry. You look at others and they seem to have it all figured out. Their faith seems so simple, their lives so aligned. And you wonder, what is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You are being positioned. The shepherd takes the sheep away from the fold when it is time to heal a wound or teach a new command. You are in the solitude of the soul. And it is in this solitude that you must confront the most difficult thing of all, your own spiritual self-honesty. Joseph's journey did not begin with a vision. It began with a confession. He had to admit that he did not know. He had to admit that the wisdom of men was insufficient. He had to admit that he was broken. In his own history, he wrote about the confusion and the war of words. But deeper than the external noise was an internal realization. I cannot do this alone. I do not know the way. How many of us are brave enough to admit that? We spend so much energy defending our stability, proving to our neighbors and our families that we are strong. But God cannot fill a cup that is already full of self-assurance. He needs you empty. He needs you to reach that point of desperation where you say, I don't care about looking righteous anymore. I just need truth. I need God. This is the question burning in the soul. It is not a casual inquiry. It is not a question you ask while checking your watch. It is the question you ask when you have run out of options. It is the cry of the soul that realizes it is starving. Think of the timeline. Joseph studied. He attended meetings. He listened. He read. He agonized. This went on for a long time. It wasn't a 5-minute process. It was a season of wrestling. You might be in your season of wrestling. It might have lasted years. You might be waiting for a spouse, waiting for a child to return, waiting for a relief from illness, waiting to know if you are forgiven. The waiting is not wasted time. The waiting is the fire that burns off the dross. It burns off the superficial reasons for praying. When you pray on day 1, you might be praying for comfort. By day 100, you are praying for survival. By day 1000, you are praying for the very presence of God, and nothing else will suffice. The silence purifies your desire. It strips away the non-essential requests until only the core need remains. Joseph said, My mind was called up to serious reflection and great uneasiness. Uneasiness. We treat anxiety and spiritual restlessness as enemies, things to be medicated or distracted away. But what if your restlessness is the Holy Spirit disturbing your slumber? What if that uneasiness is the only way God can get you to move? If Joseph had been content with the confusion, he never would have entered the grove. If you were content with your current level of light, you would never seek the greater portion. Bless the uneasiness. Bless the hunger. It is the engine of your exaltation. But now we must speak of the darkness. We must speak of what happens the moment you decide to kneel. You know this part of the story, but have you applied it to your psychological reality? Joseph finds the spot. He looks around to make sure he is alone. He kneels. He begins to offer up the desires of his heart. And what happens? Does the light come immediately? No. Immediately I was seized upon by some power which entirely overcame me. The tongue is bound. The mind is clouded. The darkness is thick. This is the dark night of the soul that mystics have spoken of for centuries. Why? Why does opposition strike the hardest when we are closest to the light? Because the adversary knows your potential better than you do. The resistance you feel, the sudden wave of depression, the spike in anxiety, the unexpected calamity in your family, the doubt that whispers, "This is all fake." This is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is the definitive sign that you are on the right path. If you were walking away from God, the adversary would leave you alone. He does not waste ammunition on those who are already drifting into the abyss. He saves his fury for the one who is about to break through. This moment in the grove, where Joseph felt he was doomed to sudden destruction, is the moment of total surrender. And this is the pivot point for you. When the darkness hits, when the silence screams, what do? Most people retreat. They say, "This is too hard. I must be doing something wrong. God must not be there." And they get up off their knees and go back to the noise. But the prophetic pattern requires you to stay. It requires you to exert all your powers to call upon God to deliver you. Not to deliver you into ease, but to deliver you into truth. You must understand the nature of this thick darkness. It is not just external evil. It is the internal confrontation with your own shadow, your own fears, your own smallness. It is the moment the ego dies. Joseph could not save himself. He realized that no amount of logic, no amount of reading, no amount of human will could break the chains of that darkness. He had to be rescued. This is the death of pride. You cannot have the first vision without the first humility. You have to reach the end of yourself to find the beginning of God. And then, at the very moment of great alarm, he saw a pillar of light. Notice the timing. At the very moment, not a moment before. God is never early, but he is never late. He stretches the tension to the snapping point. Why? Because it is in the snapping that we are opened. If the light had come while Joseph was comfortable, it would have been a nice experience. But because it came when he was destroyed, it was a saving experience. The magnitude of the light is proportional to the depth of the darkness you have endured. You are being carved out. The sorrow you feel is digging the well deeper so that it can hold more living water. Do not despise the digging. Do not despise the silence. Let us go deeper into the question burning in the soul. What is it for you? Truly, it is likely not a theological debate about denominations. It is usually something far more primal. Am I loved? Do I matter? Can I be forgiven for what I did? Is there a plan for this pain? You must articulate this question. You must bring it out of the shadows of your subconscious and lay it on the altar. Joseph's question was specific. Which of all the sects is right? But the answer he received went far beyond the question. He asked about churches. He received the Father and the Son. He asked for direction. He received a dispensation. This is a principle of divine economy. God always answers the faithful prayer with more than was asked. You are asking for a way to pay your rent. God is trying to teach you the laws of abundance and trust. You are asking for a rebellious child to behave. God is trying to teach you the perfect love of a parent, the kind of love he has for you. You are asking for the silence to end. God is preparing you to become a voice for others. But you must listen. The quote says, "Heaven was silent, so he could finally hear." Hearing is an art. It is not a passive activity. It is an active, muscular focus of the spirit. In our world, we are terrified of silence. We fill every second with podcasts, music, notifications, news. We are drowning in data and starving for wisdom. To hear the question, and the answer, you must ruthlessly eliminate the noise. You must create a sacred grove in your life. Maybe it is your car on the commute. Maybe it is a closet. Maybe it is a walk at 5 a.m. It doesn't matter where it is. It matters that it is yours and that it is quiet. In that quiet, you will face yourself. You will remember things you wanted to forget. You will feel the sting of conscience. This is good. This is the refiner's fire. Let it burn. Let it reveal the truth of who you are. Because God cannot save a fake version of you. He cannot bless the mask you wear to church. He can only bless the raw, trembling, honest soul underneath. When Joseph Smith left the grove, he was not the same boy who entered. He had seen. And once you have seen, you cannot unsee. Once you have heard, you cannot unhear. This brings a responsibility. The silence before revelation is a gift, but the revelation itself is a stewardship. If you receive a witness, if you feel that burning assurance that God lives and knows you, you are obligated to hold that light. You become a lighthouse in a dark world. And the world is very dark right now. People are confused. They are anxious. They are desperate. They need to look into the eyes of someone who has been to the grove and survived the darkness. They need to see the reflection of that pillar of light in your countenance. There is a rhythm to this. Struggle, silence, surrender, light, witness. You cannot skip steps. You are somewhere on this timeline. Perhaps you are in the struggle, the confusion, the noise. Fight through it. Perhaps you are in the silence, the lonely waiting. Endure it. Perhaps you are in the surrender, the darkness, the pressure. Yield to God, not the fear. Perhaps you are in the light, the clarity, the peace. Soak in it. Or perhaps you are in the witness, the time to stand up and walk back home. Let's talk about the specific mechanics of this hearing. How do you know when the silence breaks? How do you recognize the voice? For Joseph, it was a literal voice. For you, it is usually a still small voice. But do not mistake small for weak. It is small like a laser is small, focused, piercing, powerful. Cuts through the noise. It feels like intelligence flowing into you. It feels like ideas that are better than your own. It feels like peace that defies the logic of your situation. Sometimes the answer is not yet. That is the hardest answer. When the silence continues even after you have pleaded. What then? Then you are in the graduate school of faith. Then you are being asked to trust the character of God more than the timeline of God. You are being asked to believe that He is good, even when He is quiet. This is the faith of Abraham. This is the faith of Joseph in Liberty Jail. O God, where art thou? Even the prophet who saw the Father felt the silence again. It is a recurring cycle. We grow, we hit a ceiling, we struggle, we break through. The silence is the womb of revelation. It is where the new creature is formed. Do not abort the process by giving up too soon. There is a profound lesson in the fact that Joseph went to the grove in the spring. Early spring. The world was waking up from winter. The trees were bare or just budding. The ground was likely cold and damp. It was not the height of summer comfort. It was a time of transition. Your soul is in a time of transition. You are coming out of a spiritual winter. You can feel the thaw, but the air is still biting. This is the time to plant. What you plant in the silence of this season will determine the harvest of your life. Joseph carried a scripture in his heart. James 1 verse 5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. He didn't just read it, he let it dismantle him. He said, never did any passage of scripture come with more power to the heart of man than this did at this time to mine. This is another key. The silence is broken by the word. If you are waiting for God to speak, open his letters. Read the scriptures not to finish a chapter, but to find a trigger. Find the verse that enters with power. Find the phrase that haunts you, that follows you around all day. That is the key turning in the lock. We often think of Joseph Smith as a giant, a pillar of the faith. And he was. But in that moment, he was a 14-year-old boy with no status, no money, and no followers. He was a nobody in the eyes of the world. Yet, the creator of the universe paused the cosmos to answer him. Why? Because God respects the seeker. He respects the one who knocks. It does not matter how many mistakes you have made. It does not matter how long you have been away. It does not matter if you feel unworthy. The only qualification for the grove is the desire to know. Joseph wrote, I found that I must either remain in darkness and confusion, or else I must do as James directs, that is, ask of God. It was a binary choice. Remain in darkness or ask. You have the same choice. You can settle for a life of quiet desperation, managing your pain, distracting your soul. Or you can ask. You can risk the silence. You can risk the darkness. You can go to the woods. And what if the answer transforms you into something you didn't expect? That is the risk. We are afraid of God's answer because we know it will demand change. If He speaks, we must move. If He commands, we must obey. The silence is safe. The revelation is dangerous to our comfort zones. But it is the only path to life. Let's return to the concept of the question. Joseph's question was about truth. But underneath that, it was about salvation. How can I be right with God? This is the question that haunts every human soul. We try to answer it with success, with relationships, with morality. But the only answer that satisfies is the voice of the Lord saying, Joseph, my son, thy sins are forgiven thee. That is what he eventually heard. That is what you need to hear. And you can. The heavens are not brass. They are not empty. They are full of watching eyes. We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. But there is a veil. And the veil is there for a reason. It forces us to develop spiritual eyes. If we saw God with our physical eyes all the time, we would not need faith. But we are here to learn to see with the heart. The silence trains the heart to see. Imagine yourself in the grove right now. Close your physical eyes. See the trees. Feel the damp earth. Hear the wind in the branches. Now feel the silence. Do not rush to fill it. Let it sit heavy on your shoulders. In that silence, bring up your pain. Bring up your confusion. Bring up your deepest, most terrifying question. Hold it there. Offer it up. And then, wait. Do not be afraid of the thoughts that come to you in that space. Do not be afraid of the tears. Tears are the language of the soul when words fail. Joseph described his feelings as deep and poignant. You must allow yourself to feel deeply. We live in a shallow age. We skim the surface of life. To touch the divine, you must dive into the deep end. The adversary wants you to believe that the silence is proof of God's absence. That is the great lie. The silence is proof of God's patience. He is waiting for you to be ready to hear. He is waiting for the frequency of your soul to match the frequency of His voice. Think of the aftermath. Joseph had to go back to the cabin. He had to lean up against the fireplace. He had to look at his mother and say, I have learned for myself. That is the goal. Not to learn for your parents. Not to learn for your bishop. Not to learn for your spouse. To learn for yourself. To have a knowledge so secure that even if the whole world mocked you, you could say, I knew it, and I knew that God knew it, and I could not deny it. That kind of certainty is rare. It is expensive. Costs everything. Costs your pride, your time, your social standing, your comfort. But it is the pearl of great price. It is worth selling everything to buy. So you stand at the edge of the woods. The sun is setting, or is it rising? That depends on you. It depends on whether you are willing to walk into the shadows to find the light. Before Joseph entered the grove, heaven was silent. Let that sentence comfort you. Your silence is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the deep breath before the shout of triumph. There are 7 insights I want you to carry with you as you navigate your own silence. These are not just intellectual points. They are survival mechanisms for the spiritual seeker. First, the confusion is the call. If you feel conflicted, if you feel a war of words in your life, do not despair. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the resolution of it. The confusion is simply the dust kicked up by the construction of your soul. God is building something new in you, and construction sites are messy. Second, solitude is a requirement, not a punishment. You cannot borrow light. You can borrow a match, but you must have your own oil. You must go where the crowd cannot follow. This means disconnecting. It means finding a space where you are not performing for anyone. Third, the adversary strikes at the threshold. When you feel the hardest resistance, push harder. Do not yield to the darkness. That sudden wave of fear or lethargy is a sign that you are inches away from the breakthrough. The dogs bark loudest when the stranger is at the gate. The adversary screams loudest when the Lord is at the door. Fourth, Scripture is the catalyst. The words of dead prophets wake up the living prophets within us. When you read, you are tuning your receiver. Find the verse that burns. It is there waiting for you. Fifth, the prayer must be vocal. Joseph said he offered up the desires of his heart. There is power in the spoken word. Speaking your prayer defines it. It makes it real. It is an act of creation. Even if you just whisper, let the words leave your lips. God, I am here. I am listening. Sixth, deliverance is an act of grace. You cannot force the vision. You cannot demand the light. You prepare the altar, you lay the sacrifice, but God sends the fire. You must wait for His timing. This requires a surrender of control. Seventh, the answer brings a mission. When the light comes, it will give you work to do. It will clarify your purpose. You are not saved just for your own sake. You are saved to save others. Your breakthrough is meant to be a bridge for someone else. You are living in the dispensation of the fullness of times. That sounds grand and historical, but what it means for you is that everything is being gathered together. The light and the dark are separating. You can feel it. The gray areas are disappearing. You have to choose sides. The silence is forcing you to choose. Do not fear the silence. It is the canvas upon which God will paint His masterpiece in your life. As we draw this to a close, I want you to feel the stillness of this moment. Stop scrolling. Stop thinking about the next video. Just be here. There is a God in heaven. He reveals mysteries to those who seek Him in the dark. He is not a God of the past. He is the God of your present. He knows your name. He knows the question that you are afraid to ask. And He is ready to answer. But you must enter the grove. You must leave the world behind for a moment. You must face the darkness. And you must ask. This is your invitation. The trees are waiting. The morning air is crisp. The noise of the revival is fading in the distance. It is just you and the canopy of heaven. Take the step. If you have made it this far, if you have sat through the silence and the teaching, then you are the one this message was meant for. Do not let this feeling evaporate. Anchor it. Write the word ready in the comments. Or write, I am listening. Make a physical mark in the world to testify of what is happening in your soul. The darkness is heavy, yes, but the light is stronger, and the light is coming. Wait for it. Work for it. Pray for it. Thus the witness comes. Not in the noise, but in the stillness. Go to your grove.